Today's lesson is called Midpoint and Distance on a Coordinate Plane. This will be your last lesson of the week. These are the notes, and then you will apply this to a graded assignment. First thing you need to know is what the definition of a midpoint is. A midpoint is the distance between two endpoints. When you find a midpoint, it creates two congruent segments. So there is a formula that you have to use to find a midpoint. Let me give you this formula. Make sure you write it down correctly. When you find a midpoint, you are using points on a coordinate plane. So you have ordered pair number 1, and you have ordered pair number 2. When you have two ordered pairs and you're finding a midpoint, the first thing you need is the value of x. So to find your midpoint of x, you take x1 plus x2, find the sum, and divide by 2. Next, to find y, you take y1 plus y2, and you divide it by 2. And that will give you two values for xy to represent your midpoint of those segments. Alright? Make sure you have that formula written correctly. So I'm giving you a coordinate plane here. Taking a look at all those points, you're going to use this coordinate plane to find the midpoint of the designated points below. So when we look here below, it's asking for A and B. So A, make sure you write the correct ordered pairs down. A is at 1, 4. B is at 9, 2. To find the midpoint, again, you're going to use that formula. So you're going to take 1 plus 9 divided by 2. You're going to take 4 plus 2 and divide it by 2. Now remember, find the sum of the numerator before you divide, because 1 plus 9 is 10, divided by 2 is 5. And if you put that in your calculator, 1 plus 9 divided by 2 is going to give you 5.5. So make sure you follow the order of operations and you add before you divide. So 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Go ahead and try number 2 and 3. I'm going to give you a minute or two to complete that. Hopefully on number 2 you have the ordered pair -7, 7, and -5, -7. So if you add these x values up, -7 plus -5 divided by 2, that gives you -12 divided by 2, which is -6. 7 plus -7 is 0. 0 divided by 2 is 0. So the hardest thing about this is writing the correct ordered pairs. E is at -2, -3. F is located at 5, 0. So once again, just for the midpoint formula, you're going to add your x values together, and divide by 2. So negative 2 plus 5 is 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. And yes, you can have a decimal for a midpoint. And negative 3 plus 0 divided by 2 is negative 3 divided by 2, which gives you negative 1.5. And that's the first half of this lesson, midpoints. So if we turn here on the back, the second thing that you have to learn is distance. Now we talked about the distance formula briefly on the PSSAs because they added this distance formula. Right here is the distance formula. They added that next to Pythagorean's theorem. So once again, on a coordinate plane, you will have two ordered pairs. One thing that students make a mistake on is when they use this distance formula, make sure you realize that when you're subtracting those x values and you square it, the result should always be a positive number. The result should always be positive. So remember, we've talked about before, negative 2 in parentheses squared is 4, but if you type this in your calculator without the parentheses, it gives you a negative 4. We don't want it without parentheses. So once again, I've given you a coordinate plane, and your first task is to make sure that you write your ordered pairs correctly. So make sure when you're writing your ordered pairs, you know where they go. So I'll demonstrate number 4, but here's something I want you to pay attention to. It says find the distance. Write your answer as a simplified radical. We learned how to simplify radicals, and the distance formula is used a lot in geometry next year. And the reason we learned how to simplify those radicals was for that purpose. So, E and F. E is located, take a look at your graph, at 2, negative 3. F is located at 7, 7. So I'll make this larger here so I can write a little better. Okay. So once you have your two ordered pairs, you follow the formula. And the formula is a large radical. In the first set of parentheses, you're going to take your x value 2, and you're going to subtract your x value of 7, and you're going to write squared. X minus x squared. Make sure you put a plus sign next because you're adding. Then you're going to take the y value from the ordered pair you started with, negative 3, and you're going to subtract the y value in the other one, and you square. So take a look at that, make sure you have that written correctly. Next, you're going to simplify what's in parentheses. So 2 minus 7 is negative 5 squared, plus negative 3 minus 7 is negative 10 squared. Now remember, those parentheses are there for a reason. When you square a negative, it becomes positive. So negative 5 squared is 25. Negative 10 squared is 100. Now at this point, you have to add underneath your radical. So you do not try to simplify there. This is the square root of 125. And then when we simplify radicals, you have to think of the biggest perfect square factor that goes into 125. So you can't forget these for your graded assignment. The biggest perfect square is 25, and that's multiplied by 5. And then you got to recall, oops, sorry. I don't know how to get rid of that. There we go. The square root of 25 turns into 5. And And the final answer is 5, the square root of 5. Oops, where'd it go? Lost it. I gotta write it again. I don't know what's going on with this. There's the answer to the first one. Alright? So you can see your graph in front of you. Let's do number 5. 5G should be at -9, -4. And take a look and write down where H is. H should be at -4, 8. So once again, D with a big long radical. The formula says to take your x value, -9, minus the x value, and notice how I wrote it, -9 minus a -4. Then you add your y value, -4 minus 8, and I'm going to square it. Before I go to the second line, I noticed that there's these two minuses, and the first set of parentheses, they turn to plus. So this changes to -9 plus 4 is -5. -4 minus 8 is -12. If you make a mistake with your math, it's going to throw off the answer. Next step, -5 squared, +25. -12 squared is +144. Square root, 169. Now when you're doing these large numbers like this, because you guys only have to have memorized up to 144, the first thing you should do is try to put that as a square root. Do the square root of 169 on your calculator. Why should you do that if they're bigger than 144? Because they might be a perfect square. So when you guys try the square root of 169, it actually is a perfect square. And the final answer to this one turns into a whole number, 13. So there's one more to try, and then you have some problems to try for practice. J and K. So take a look at the graph up there and write the two ordered pairs for J and K. Hopefully you're picking up on how these two formulas work. J is at -8.5. K is at 6, -7. Distance equals big long radical. So you're going to take your x value, -8, minus the x value of 6. You're going to square it. Plus your y value of 5 minus the y value of -7 squared. You're going to look at that, and that 5 minus a -7 is going to turn into plus, because 2 negatives is a positive. Next line, -8 minus 6 is -14 squared. 5 plus 7 is 12 squared. Next line, -14 squared is 196. 12 squared is 144. Next line, 340. And now you're going to have to try your biggest perfect squares until you find the biggest perfect square that goes into 340. So you're going to start at 144, 121, 100. You're going to go until you find the one, because sometimes on your graded assignment, it'll be a wow, because the only perfect square that goes into 340 is 4. So it's going to take a while to get down to there. 4 times 85 is 340, and that changes to be 2 the square root of 85. And that's your lesson on midpoint and distance.